Hello and welcome. Welcome everyone to the first part of the Unmask series, where we'll be talking to you about unmasking abuse and today, debunking myths. We're going to be talking to you for the next 30 minutes. So thank you for joining us on your lunch break. My name is Dr. Merary Simeon, survivor of domestic violence and an activator of talent. I'm on a mission to empower women to activate their strengths and live a life of their purpose. I know what it is to live in the shadows. I know what it is to have experienced this type of pain. And I want the listeners to know today that you too can arise and you too can shine. The topic that we're talking about today is not one that is easy to talk about. Yet studies show that 1 in every 4 women and 1 in 7 men experience partner abuse. Today, we want to ask you, if you have questions, to please text them to us at the number that you see on the screen if you want to remain anonymous, or you could put it in the chat. Today with me is an expert in the topic, a friend, an attorney, a defender of people who experience domestic violence, and an author that talks about this very topic. So I want to introduce you to Sonia Bosonia. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and why you do what you do.
Well, first of all, welcome to everyone who is with us today to talk about this really important topic. Like you said, I'm an attorney. I'm a family attorney and also an empowerment trainer and an author. And I have been an advocate for domestic violence survivors for 28 years. My journey in this area started when I was still a law student, and I became an intern in the domestic violence unit of the family court. And there I got to experience firsthand what it's like for the victims to come in. I got to do intake. I got to accompany the complainants in court. Those who are not represented. Later, I was a legal representative for people who were victims of domestic abuse in court, and also as an interpreter. And that gave me a lot of experience with the legal aspects of it. But most importantly, I am also a survivor of abuse. And I discovered this when I was 24 years old. I got married, and within 24 hours of the wedding, I learned that my now ex-husband was a psychologically abusive man. And I didn't realize at the time that I was in an abusive situation. And I want everyone to not go through what I went through. I want people who find themselves in unhappy and abusive situations to understand what the signs are, so that they can break free from abuse, and very importantly as well, for their loved ones to understand the signs from the outside so that they can help those who are in abusive situations break free and claim the lives that they deserve.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I think that is just so important because there are so many myths, and we'll be talking about it today. But many people, number one, do not even feel that they could break free from the abuse at that moment. It just seems so dark, right? And a lot of people feel ashamed of, hey, I didn't know, or I didn't see the signs, or I saw the signs and did nothing about it. So let's get through those. The first myth that I want to make sure that we address is the image of the abuser. Some people may think it it may have to do, the person doesn't look like an abuser, right? They could think, hey, it's a different social status or ethnicity, whatever it may be. But the reality is that that is not the case. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, one of the biggest misconceptions is we think that abusers are people who are uneducated, people who are violent, people who are visibly angry in public, and we don't realize that abusers come in all kinds of flavors. They can be people that you would never suspect. It could be your doctor, your lawyer, even your minister, a police officer, and they can be people who are very charming. And that's one of the biggest hurdles that victims encounter, is that their abusers show a different front when they are in company, in the presence and company of others. And what happens behind closed doors is completely ignored by those who love the victim. They don't know what's happening, the different kinds of acts, the screaming, the physical abuse. You really don't know unless you find yourself in that situation, and you don't know what the other person is going through. And that's why it's so hard for the victims to come forward, because they are not believed when people see that persona that is being presented by the abuser.
It's interesting you say that, because some people feel like, they say, oh, the enemy comes, looking, like you said, somebody that is always angry or shows that demeanor to everyone. But the reality is, and in my case, it was somebody that was well liked by a lot of people, right? And it wasn't the attitude that they would show to everyone else. So it's just so interesting that you mentioned that, because that is exactly one of the things that I lived through, right? Is everybody's like, well, what did you do? Right?
Yes,
Because I'm the fiery one. What did you do?
exactly.
Instead of, how can I help, or what are you going through? The first thing is, sometimes is, that person doesn't seem like that. And I think that's
Yes.
critical, because we need to make sure that people understand that that's a myth. The image of the abuser could look exactly like someone like you and me. It could be a professional, or somebody that is well loved by their community, or their friends, or their family, or their coworkers. So that's the first one. So thank you for doing that, for addressing that topic. The other myth that we've heard about is that abuse is physical. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, we tend to think, and that's why I don't like to use the term domestic violence. I prefer to use the term partner abuse, because that gives us the impression that all abuse is physical, when in fact it is not. And in fact, the National Domestic Violence Hotline reports that 95% of their calls for help involve emotional abuse, not physical abuse. And the Allstate Foundation reports that from a study that they conducted, that the most pervasive and the hardest to detect form of abuse is financial abuse. So
Wow.
we have a lot of people suffering in these relationships, but there are no marks, there are no bruises. And when people don't see those signs of abuse, they may not realize that the people they know and love are struggling with abuse. They don't know how to help them, and it's not visible even to the victims themselves, because they don't realize that what's going on in their relationships constitutes abuse, so they don't look for help. And the people who can help them cannot help what they don't identify either. So it leaves them in a very vulnerable position, and abuse doesn't go away by itself, and it tends to escalate over time. And that's why it's so important to recognize the signs. And that's why I'm so excited to be here with you, so that we can learn more about this topic, so we can all be a part of the solution to this epidemic.
No, thank you for bringing that up. And I want to remind the listeners that this is a three-part series, and we'll be talking in more detail about these type of signs, so that you can please join us for the second and third series and hear more about it. I love that you brought up the financial piece, because I think that is not something that people often think about, the
Mm-hmm.
financial abuse. And this is critical, because this financial abuse doesn't have to always come from a partner, but it can also come from family members. It could come from friends. It could come from different shapes and forms. And it is and it is critical that people understand that the myth that it's only physical, or that it's just a specific, it's the partner, it's a myth. It's a myth. People can absolutely abuse their power, their friendship, or their relationships when it comes to the financial aspect of it. And I think,
Yes.
go ahead. Hmm.
No, no. Go
And
ahead.
that's one of the things that I think a lot of us don't really think about when and we look at it from a perspective. Oh, well, I have it, I can help, right? And a lot of that could be cultural, right? Like, hey, so and so needs help, but then it kind of comes into a way where they're the ones controlling your money. They're the ones that you basically work for at the end of the day, or provide for. So I'm glad that you brought that up. I think the other piece of it, that it's not physical, but it is mental. Those are probably one of the difficult ones, right? Because it really changes who you are and who you become, because you start believing things, especially the mental abuse. You start believing things that somebody that you love tells you. So you would think a person that you love is telling you good things, but this abuse is coming from someone you love. And it and it may not have bruises, physical bruises, but it does have internal bruises that really end up hurting you and controlling you later on. It also stops you from achieving your fullest potential, right? uh, there's another myth that's out there. There's lots, but this one is, we see a lot, is it's my fault. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, and this is part of the power play of the abuser, and let me just reinforce that partner abuse is about power and control. When the abuser tries to exercise dominion and control over the victim, and by the different means that we just talked about, like the financial abuse, which makes the victims dependent on their abusers, and it can be sexual abuse. It can also be emotional abuse, like you said, and what that does, it just breaks you down, and it also makes you question yourself, your self-worth. It makes you question your sanity. And the abuser tends to say things to you like, it's your fault. You made me do it. If you hadn't run your mouth, I would have had to hit you. Or if you had had dinner ready when I came through that door, because I worked so hard all day. So you have someone playing with your mind, and because you love this person, because you trust this person, you start second guessing yourself, and whether or not what the person is saying is true. And that is very, very destructive to the self-esteem. And like you said, you end up losing your sense of self and your sense of purpose, and you become minimized to the point where you are unable to express who you are and achieve your potential.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up. You made me think of something else when you talked about the abuser, the abuse feeling dependent on the abuser, right? And we've heard those stories, right? That's the reason many do not walk away, because they don't feel that they don't have the resources or can do it on their own. Number one, their self-esteem is down, right?
Mm-hmm.
They make them feel that they can't find anybody better, one, or they can't do
Yes.
better without them. And now they have tied them to the financial piece. So they feel they cannot do it on their own. So that's also, I wasn't even thinking about it from that perspective. So I
Yeah.
love that you brought it from that perspective, because it's both. It's one,
Yes.
they can abuse you from a dollar perspective, but then also make you now dependent on them from a financial
Exactly.
perspective. So that's
Exactly.
mhm.
And that's what makes financial abuse the most powerful, because the abuser is trying to prevent you from having access to money and from being able to be self-reliant and from getting an education, from holding a job, keeping all the control over the finances and bank accounts. So you are just completely stuck relying on this person for your survival. So it makes it a lot harder to break free.
Yeah, yeah. So if anybody has questions out there and is listening, text us at, if you want to remain anonymous, at the number on the screen, or if you feel free, go ahead and put it on the chat and we'll be answering some of your questions. One of the other myths that I want to talk about before our time is up is people sometimes say, hey, they like the abuse. They could walk away anytime. What can you tell us in your experience about this myth?
That is a horrendous myth, and I can tell you, and I heard my mom say it, not about me, but I heard her say it. She was once in the hospital, and they had group sessions for people, and one person was talking about not being able to leave, and this was someone with also substance abuse, but she was complaining about her partner beating her up. And my mom, just like, I could just picture her doing this. It's like, you must like it because I wouldn't put up with this. And that is the attitude not just my mom had, but a lot of people have. It's like you're putting up with it because you like it, because you're okay with it, because it makes you feel closer to your partner, whatever the misconception is. But nobody who is in this situation is in it because they like it. It's because they feel they cannot get out, because it's very difficult to break free from the abuser, and you don't know what's going on. They could be subjected to threats. They may be in fear for their lives because you don't know what's happening, but they could very well be hurt physically or threatened to be killed if they leave. So the victim is going through so many different things that create that dependence on the abuser, and that fear of breaking free, and that self-esteem that has been harmed. It makes it so much more difficult to lift yourself up and walk out that door. And that's why we are intent on bringing to you this program, so you can understand what a victim is going through and how you can help so they can break free, because it takes support to end an abusive relationship. And in fact, it can take 7 attempts before a victim can actually leave an abusive relationship. So keep that in mind.
Wow, 7 attempts. That's important. So if you're out there and you're feeling defeated, don't feel defeated. You're almost there, and that's what we're here for. And we want to make sure that if you're listening, you can get the support that you need. Another myth that I want to talk about is, hey, they see the red flags and they ignore them. Now, I heard you say this before, but sometimes they're not there. Can you help us understand that?
Yes, and that's a myth and I have had discussions with my friends about that. It's like, I find it impossible to believe that you don't know. You must have seen the signs before you got deep into the relationship, and that is not true. And it happened to me. I had no idea my ex-husband was abusive until after the wedding, and what might start as a seemingly healthy relationship might turn into an abusive relationship, because very often the abusers just wait until they feel that they have some control over the victims, and then that's when they reveal their true colors. For example, it's very common when a woman becomes pregnant or after the wedding, which is what happened to me, or any other reason that makes the victim less likely to leave. And that's when abusers very often start engaging in abusive behaviors. So there might have been the signs, but they're not always present. If they were present, do not beat yourself up for not recognizing them. You deserve to be free from abuse, and an abuser never has the right to harm you. It's never your fault, and it's not within their right to harm you or hurt you in any way.
Thank you. Now, we talked about the image of the abuser, right? They're not always going to show the signs. So I think that matches perfectly. So the red flags are not
Mm-hmm.
going to be there. It's not always physical, right? It could be sexual, it could be mentally, emotionally, it could be financial. There are That's another myth, right? It's my fault. We want to make sure that
Yes.
you're aware that it's not. That's another myth. And the other myth that we talked about is the person likes the abuse. So those are some of the myths that we are discovering today. But I want to get to a question, and thank you for texting the question. I really appreciate it for your trust in us. And the question is, I have a friend who keeps on dating the same type of men. I think it's because she feels she needs to be dominated. My friend doesn't even stand up, like she's okay with it. So it's not a question, it's more of a statement. But thank you for bringing that up. What are your thoughts about that, Sonia?
I think it's very common where people enter in relationships with similar people. And until you learn to recognize the signs and until you do the inner work to realize why is it that I am being attracted to this kind of person, you're going to continue repeating that. You will continue dating the same type of people. So it might be helpful for you to have a frank conversation with your friend. It's like, oh my God, this partner you have now is very similar to so and so and so and so. You seem to be attracting the same kind of guy. Have you ever asked yourself why? And try to have an honest conversation. However, I don't think anybody likes or wants or needs to be dominated. There might be something else playing in the background that you're not aware of. But to the degree that you can get your friend to start thinking and opening up and opening to the possibility that the kind of relationships she is in, the dynamics she has in her relationships might not be healthy, then we can expect some change. So support your friend, encourage your friend, and by all means, do not encourage your friend to take on the abuser, because if you don't know whether this person is physically abusive or dangerous, you could be putting your friend in harm's way by encouraging her to just stand up and possibly escalating a situation that could turn dangerous or harmful.
Yes, and hopefully we'll answer your question, and I'll tell you a little bit about my experience. So in my experience, I was once your friend. I was in a physical abusive relationship for close to 6, 7 years. And I
Mm,
noticed that after that, the people that I dated were also abusive. So I couldn't
mm,
understand. I could not understand, why do I keep attracting myself to this type of behavior. And I really, for me, it was my faith. Definitely, I had to
mm,
really look within and pray a lot. And honestly, I had to forgive myself, um, because I felt like it was my fault, and it wasn't.
mm.
But if I
No.
didn't forgive myself for not knowing, I probably would have never recognized it. And I found that I was very attentive to afterwards to those signs, right? Like I was like very
Good.
attentive. But then I also found that for me, I I found that every time that I would meet somebody, I was in a vulnerable state.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, um, I felt the abuser would always take advantage of that vulnerable state. And what I had to do is I had to spend time with myself alone, getting to love myself,
Mm-hmm.
and to know my worth. And then I attracted my husband, who's an amazing man, and I'm happily married
Wonderful.
for 10 years. But I found that I needed that time alone. I needed that time to really get to know how I was created, that I was perfect, that all those things that somebody wanted to put on me, they were not mine. they were not mine. And I needed to love myself for who I was and know that I I needed to take some action as well. I needed to seek help. Because I talked about the 1, 6, 7 years, but then I ended up walking into a mental abusive relationship for 10
Mm.
years, right? So it was
Wow.
hard for me to see that. And when we talk about this type of abuse, not discriminating against your social economic status, I mean, I was an executive during that time. That
Can
was,
happen to anyone.
15 years ago. And it was something that I was embarrassed to talk about. It was something that I was hiding from the world, because how can this educated woman still go through that? And I can tell you, it is, you know, it was difficult, but know that you can get through it. And it really did take, number one, me reaching out for support. So don't feel like you need to do this alone. Um, I tried standing up to the abuser and it was worse, right?
Mm-hmm. It
So I
escalates.
don't recommend that to anybody. I mean, I have friends who are witness that had to probably save my life a few times, and then
Oh my God.
I've also been in situations where I was getting beat up in the parking lot and nobody stepped in. So
Oh my God.
don't put yourself in harm's way. Definitely have a plan, seek help, but know that spending that time with you and loving you and knowing that you did nothing wrong. And yes, we all made mistakes, but at the end of the day, know that there was an abuser looking to cause damage. They were out like a roaring lion looking to destroy you. So when you have somebody that's their goal is, and you love somebody like that, it puts you in a difficult situation. So what I would say is that I echo what Sonia said earlier. Do not face them. If you're in a physical abusive relationship, you don't want your life on the line, but you definitely want to seek help from people around you. And maybe that's something we could quickly talk about, Sonia. How can somebody that may be going through this or doesn't know what to do seek help? What worked for me could be different for somebody else. Mhm.
Yeah, I think that the theme is that you need to seek help. You can't get yourself out of this on your own. It's very difficult. So reach out to the experts. It's nice to reach to family, but family is not always supportive, and that's why I recommend, or they don't understand, and that's why I recommend reaching out to an expert, whether it's a therapist. I worked with a therapist, and it helped me empower myself to leave because and you need to identify what it is that is keeping you in the relationship, even though you know it's harmful to you. But seek help from a therapist or your local domestic violence agency or the National Domestic Violence Hotline. But seek help from the experts, someone who understands what a toxic relationship is like. What are the dynamics? Because the abusers are so clever and they bamboozle everybody. They're con artists.
Mhm.
They even trick some therapists for it and believe the abuser over the victim. So get help from people who understand and will not be deceived by what's going on. And they can give you the tools that you need to break free from this situation. And it's something that you can do. A lot of people have been able to end abusive relationships. So know that you can do it. Make sure you get the resources to do it right so you don't keep going back to the abuser, and know that you deserve better, that you deserve a life that is joyful, that you deserve full self-expression, you deserve to be self-reliant and be able to control your life and your finances and who you become. So that's what and like what you said, love yourself. Because sometimes we go to our partners thinking that they are going to provide us the love and the validation for who we are. But that has to come from within. It doesn't come from a partner.
That's
Be
right.
your best friend, become your best friend.
Yes. No, I love that. Become your best friend. And we are here to bring awareness to it, but we want to make sure that you seek the support of experts. We are not experts by any means. We are here to share our story, to bring you hope and to let you know that you too can have an amazing life, a life where you do not need to live in an abusive relationship. We thank you for the time that you've given us today. We ask that you tune in on our next time, which is coming up October 20th. Same time, we can meet you here for the lunch hour. And we'll be talking about refocusing your vision. So we hope that you can join us. The other thing we want to make sure that you are aware, if you can join us for the second and the third, Sonia will let you know how you could get a copy of her book, Stop the Hurt. Sonia, do you have anything you wanted to mention about the book?
Yeah, so stay tuned. This book is for people who think they might be in abusive relationships, who find themselves in abusive relationships, or those who may think that somebody they know and love might be in a relationship that is abusive. So you can get the information you need to be certain to understand the signs and how to break free. It walks you through some of the tools that you need to end an abusive relationship. So stay with us till the end, and I'm going to tell you how you can get a free electronic copy of this publication.
Great. Thank you. And again, join us. Don't forget, next time, click on the subscribe. You'll find information right under the YouTube link so that you don't miss the next live. Thank you all for your time, and we'll see you
Thank
soon.
you.
Bye bye.
See. Bye.
Thank you.